Not all podcast ads are the same. Why? Because the real power of podcast ads depends on how many listeners it reaches. Only iHeart reaches 9 out of 10 Americans every month, feeding their passions with more of what they're looking for. So if you're ready to advertise on a podcast, not only is iHeart the #1 audio company in America, we're also the #1 podcast company with more listeners than anyone else. So check out iHeartPodcast.com. That's iHeartPodcast.com, because the next ad you hear should be yours.
This is Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Good morning. Welcome to Enjoy Incredible Health with me, your host, Dr. David Vitko. I'm a chiropractic physician with 34 years of practice experience and helped a lot of people in all those years, I'm proud to say, and hopefully left some folks with good opinions. But anyway, that's what we're here for. Try to help as many people get healthier as possible. And man, it's amazing to me. It's like we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back as far as where the leadership is on nutrition and how it affects health and things like that. And, I had some notes put together for things that I wanted to cover today, and I'm going to get to that. But, the thing that I saw in the news this week that I'm sure all of you saw was, and this always makes big news, is scientists, let's see here, a new study came out where scientists are saying that don't worry about eating less red meat, processed meat. It's really not harmful to us like we thought it was. And, I really thought we were beyond that point, because there really is a lot of great science to support the fact to say that we need to decrease the amount of red meat. Now, granted, there is a lot of room for more study, and not only on the red meat portion of it, but, and I've been talking about this the last few weeks, but the effect that too many carbohydrates have on our health. And that may be just as bad for us. And it may come back to, what we've talked about in the past, in the way of a balanced diet. Now, what our government calls a balanced diet and what I would call a balanced diet probably are 2 different things. And I don't think that if we just simply follow along with the government guidelines for eating a healthy diet, that we're going to be very healthy, because they say things like, well, 10% of your calories every day can come from table sugar, basically. It makes me wonder who's in charge and who put them in charge, because that just defies logic. Sugar, in my opinion, from my studies, and I've known this for a long time, is a pure detriment to health. It undermines our health in many ways. If you simply look at the fact that any time you take in empty calories, your body's not just a simple. I've often said that it's the body is an energy conversion system, and in many ways it's like a car engine or a furnace or a wood burner or something. It takes raw energy and converts it into work, basically. And there's not a lot of difference between us and the way other energy conversion systems work, except that it's far more complicated. And our body needs nutrients out of that whole process as well in order to continue to work properly. And so those are some of the things I want to get into today. But I want to touch base on this study first, and I'm calling it a study loosely because it looks more to me like it's a group of scientists who got together and formed an opinion, basically, and that opinion may be based more on subjective reasoning than it is science. And so I'll talk about that here in just a little. If anybody this morning wants to call in and speak to me about a health issue, you're welcome. Number's 330-729-9977. That's 330-729-9977. 888-866-9977, and I'll be glad to take your calls. Try to make it logical and succinct so, we don't beat around the bush or anything on it. So let's go to this study that these scientists are saying really loosens the reins on red meat consumption. I happened to hear one of these scientists in an interview, and his underlying premise in this thing was, well, anybody who eats meat several times a week, it's not a problem. And he tied it into this study to make it sound like that's what we're talking about. And I see this as a much bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that most people whose diets revolve around any kind of animal products, whether it's meat or dairy or whatever, probably revolves too tightly around that, those animal products. And it's not just a few times a week. These people are eating things every meal that are based on these things. And, my diet growing up is a good example of that. We had some kind of meat every meal. And that was part of the balanced diet. Now, it wasn't like my mom had the internet back then and went to the internet and said, oh, well, look, here's a balanced diet. We'll put meat in every meal. It was handed down from her family and then from things she heard and things she read and things like that, and that she wanted the best for us. And so every meal had meat in it. And I think that is an issue. And I think it's an issue that causes health problems that we may not be able to directly find evidence for because it's a big complex picture. I mean, how do you say if you have meat and potatoes or some kind of starchy vegetable or something and bread and dairy like butter or whatever in your meal, how do you say what causes what? How do you ever narrow that down to say, oh, the meat is bad or this is bad or that's bad? Well, we know certain things in our diet cause certain changes in our blood, and that's one place to look. Because with these changes in our blood, like things like I've demonstrated in my book, Perfect Cholesterol Without Drugs, if you eat meat every day, every meal, your cholesterol will go up. And that's not necessarily a good thing because that's going to give your body the potential to build heart disease and likely Alzheimer's and some other issues. Well, for instance, too much meat, and I've seen this in patients of mine, definitely foster things like rheumatoid arthritis because it increases inflammation in the body. And I've seen those inflammatory factors in the blood go down when we simply took out the saturated animal fats. And I'll put a caveat in there, and sugar, because everybody needs to reduce or eliminate sugar from your diet, if at all possible. Okay, we got a phone call here. I'm going to touch base with Betty. Good morning, Betty. It's Dr. Vitko. How can I help you?
Yes, good morning, Dr. Vitko. How are you first?
I'm doing well, Betty. How are you?
Well, I'm going to tell you what happened, and I'm going to hang up, and you can talk about it.
Okay.
I know you talked about it before. Tuesday night, I had a kidney attack, and I had to go to the emergency room. And they did a CAT scan, and they found out I have a 3 mm kidney stone.
Okay.
Can you talk about what you should do? They didn't give me any instructions yet. I have to go see a specialist next week.
Okay.
It didn't pass yet, and I'll hang up.
Okay, you sure that's all you want to tell me? How long is this the first one you've had?
Yes, I was even shocked when I was screaming as my sister was driving me to the hospital, and I was screaming. I was in terrible pain.
I feel for you. Trust me, I know.
Before, and I know you talked about it before.
Yeah, I know all about kidney stones, and I feel for you. It's some of the worst pain you can have. And okay, yeah, if you want to hang up, I'll go on about that. Thanks for calling.
Take care.
Okay, thank you. So, the whole thing about kidney stones, I mean, I'll touch base on it real quickly since Betty called and asked, is, look, anybody can get kidney stones, but we are in the kidney stone belt here. And part of that reflects back to our overall diet in this area. Nobody really knows exactly why this kidney stone belt kind of stretches through Appalachia all the way down to northern Florida, from Ohio and from some of the eastern states. It's an incredibly large area. I think it even extends over toward Michigan. Part of it may have to do with vitamin D deficiency from our winters here and our cloud cover and things like that. Part of it may have to do with our propensity toward eating a higher meat-based diet. And I have to lean toward that, the meat and the sugar on that too, because those are the major changes I made in my diet. And I said in the past, I've had 17 kidney stones before I could figure out how to fix it, because nobody in medicine could give me an answer. Drink more water. Don't eat tomatoes. Don't eat rhubarb. Baloney. Drinking more water is definitely a good thing. And I did start doing that. But that alone is not going to fix the metabolic problem that causes kidney stones. If you want to get to the metabolic problem, you have to eliminate the sugar and at least significantly decrease the animal products in your diet. And it made a total difference in me. Betty, it's been now 10 years since I've had my last stone, between 9 and 10 years. And I've never gone more than a year and a half or 2 years without a kidney stone since I was 25 years old. And by the way, a 3 millimeter stone is, and this is not medical advice, but Betty, a 3 millimeter stone is absolutely something you could pass. It's not pleasant. I've had even small stones that took me a month to pass or more, and you just have to drink a lot of fluids. I'd recommend drinking a lot of water, and a warm bath was something that would always ease the pain a little bit for me, and so I recommend that too. And but drink a lot of water and keep doing that every day. It gets old, but the more water you flush through your kidneys, better chance of that thing of passing. The other thing I did that I think when I would get a stone that kind of helped was, and as much as it hurts to do it, is to walk. I would walk for exercise. And I tell patients all the time, running is not a good exercise. Walking's better, but you still have kind of a pounding when you walk. And that puts a little shake through the kidneys. And so if you can walk every day a little bit, don't overdo it. But especially if you're somebody who walks anyway, keep walking every day and drinking fluids and things like that, and it'll help to actually move that thing and get things moving a little faster sometimes. But 3 millimeter is definitely passable. I've passed much larger than that when they told me I couldn't. So the human body is truly an amazing thing. And hang in there. And odds are, Betty, if you are 50 years of age or older and that's your first stone, you may get through the rest of your life without having another one. But changing your diet will definitely help reduce the animal products and eliminate sugar from your diet. So when I say eliminate sugar, look, I know the people around this area, the heritage, the ethnic backgrounds and things. Holidays are coming up. You're going to eat a piece of pie, or you're going to eat some kolache, or, you might eat some pigs in a blanket or something. Look, it's not what you do every day that it is what you do every day that makes the difference in your health. It's not what you do once in a while that makes a difference. So, if a holiday comes and you want to celebrate that holiday with a piece of pie, it's like a little speed bump for your body. It'll never even notice it. But if you do that every day, you're eating sugar every day, it's going to have a profound effect on your health, because it changes your chemistry in your body. It changes the physiology, the way things interact, the chemical reactions, the way the cells react and things in your body. And if I can instill in you the one understanding that it is what you do every day that makes a difference. That's why I say, every drop of liquid and every morsel of food you put into your body has an effect, either positive or negative. Now, how often you do it is going to determine what your health status is. Now, there are exceptions to that, where if you do something one time, it may kill you. If you take arsenic one time, it's going to kill you. But when it comes to food, even as bad as I think sugar is for us, you can get away with things for quite a while, but sugar is absolutely something that causes inflammation in your body. And if you have rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or any of the other autoimmune type diseases, get off of sugar alone even, and that will make a tremendous difference in your health over time. And over time is the operative phrase, because you have to spend time and you have to give your body a chance to heal. It takes time, but you can definitely make a difference. Okay, so that aside, let's go on to this this study where the scientists said that you can eat red meat. It doesn't affect you, and it is not the health problem that we thought it was. Well, I'm going to tell you that I believe it is a health problem when you do it every day. So, again, it's what you do every day that makes a huge difference. Do you remember one time I told you the little analogy that I heard from a doctor once who said, if there was a boulder in a stream and a sudden rush of water hit it, that boulder might tumble down the stream a little ways, but it's not going to change the nature of the boulder. But if you have a constant drip, drip, drip of water on that boulder, it's going to eventually wear the boulder away. And it's the same thing with our diet. What you do every day is that drip, drip, drip. When the holidays come and you eat that piece of pecan pie or apple pie with whipped cream on it or something, it's not going to change the nature of your health. It may make you feel bloated, and it may make you hold water for the next 24 hours. You know, it may have some sort of quick impact on your body, but it's not going to give you cancer, and it's not going to make you deathly sick for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks with some kind of virus or illness. It's just not going to do that. But when you eat sugar every day, it weakens your immune system and it makes you susceptible to things. And it gives you the chance, your body becomes weakened, and it gives disease a little foothold in your body. And that's when we get into trouble. When disease gets that foothold and we don't put the brakes on what we're doing. So this whole meat thing, I've told you many times, always look at the source of the funding on these things. And I know that very few of you actually go look into the research itself. I read the research studies, and whenever, even if you get nothing but the abstract, which is basically a little hint of what's in it, written as a synopsis by the author, it always shows, there's a disclaimer there that always shows the sources of any kind of conflict that the author has. So if they have, for instance, if they were funded by a big soda maker, then, we might be suspect if they say that sugar is not bad for us, that you can have as much sugar as you want. We might be a little suspect about that. Now, sometimes that funding source is pretty obscure, and you have to really search to find it. Sometimes it might be funded by some kind of a, like a institute or some kind of a trade group, or even there are other things like could be government sources, and you don't know sometimes through the government organizations how that money is supplied and how that group is funded, because even government groups are affected by outside money. And it kind of bothers me that even sometimes in the National Institutes of Health, we see studies that appear to be very good studies. But when you look at the source of the funding, it makes it just a little suspect. And to me, that takes away from the value of it. So this study that was just done that demonstrated that red meat is not the problem for our health that we think it is. It turns out that one of the doctors, one of the PhDs in this study, indicated he had no disclosure. There was no disclosure of any conflicts of interest, and yet, and that usually goes back 3 years is the way they look at that. I don't think that's right, because I think sometimes that can go on, and that funding can come from sources that may look a little disconnected, but they're there. But anyway, back in 2016, one of these, Bradley Johnson, actually was noted to have authored a similar study that discredited international health guidelines advising people to eat less sugar. So there is a tie between sugar and meat, apparently. And I'm just getting through this, folks. I just found this study this morning, but And that study appeared in the Annals of Internal Medicine, and it was paid for in part, at least, by International Life Sciences Institute, an industry trade group largely supported by agribusiness, food and pharmaceutical companies, and whose members have included McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, and Cargill, one of the largest beef producers in North America. So, I'm not saying that we just automatically toss this study and say it's not valid based on that. But it certainly casts a shadow of suspicion in my mind when there are ties to these industries. The guy's gotten money in the past from them. And that, by the way, that's how these researchers make their money many times, is by bringing insertions of money into universities and things like that. And that's how they keep their departments going. And that's where a lot of the funding for studies come from. And I think that's a really terrible thing because it leads people down the wrong path. Now, I told you in the past how my friend Dr. Merkin mentioned that he had inside information that the researchers at Harvard were paid by the sugar industry to say that sugar had no ill effect on our health. And that's how one of the ways our government decided on saying you could have 10% of your total calories every day as sugar, as table sugar. In effect, basically, if it's in sodas or candy or cakes or pies, that's a source of table sugar. 10% of your calories every day, that's a huge amount of your calories every day. So maybe that's partly where that whole thing came from, where, we had dessert at every meal growing up. Well, you can have this, that, and the other thing. And I remember taking lunch to school in a brown bag. I think I had a bologna sandwich on Wonder Bread, and I always wondered if it really was bread. But you could eat it, basically, and you got sugar out of it because that's a good part of what it was in a white processed flour. But bologna sandwich with that, maybe some mustard on the bologna sandwich, a bag of chips, and a Twinkie, and so the Twinkie was the sugar. That was probably 30% of my calories or more at lunch. But, I think back to those times and I think, that's probably where a lot of my health problems came from, not just the lunch, but, even the great meals that my mom cooked. And, we would have, and she often got up and made breakfast for my dad and us kids before we went to school and things like that. And God bless her for that. And I love her for that. But those foods probably were not the most healthful thing. So let's look at our diets and look at how we have these habits that have developed out of studies, basically. And that should shed new light on when these new studies come out and say, oh, you can have, basically don't worry about eating red meat. And when they say red meat, that plays into dairy and any other animal products because they all are basically, part of eating other animals' tissues, basically, for our nutrition. And I believe there are some inherent problems in that causes real physiological problems in our bodies because our body has a hard time dealing with that. Now, if you do it irregularly, and so that's something that you do a couple of times a week, it's probably not going to have a profound effect on your health either way. But you need to think about that when you choose the foods that you eat every day. And the best way to do it is to get yourself into a habit of eating high-quality fruits and vegetables every day and let the rest of your diet revolve around that. I'll get back to that in a minute. Dr. David Vitko here, and this is Enjoy Incredible Health. We'll be right back, folks.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Alrighty, we're back. If you want to call in, any questions about health, welcome. 330-729-9977. That's 729-9977. So, I always feel a little self-indulgent when I do this, and I hate to talk about myself, but I know that some people want an update on where I'm at with my esophageal cancer and what I'm doing to treat it and all, and my progress. And, honestly, folks, week to week almost seems like it's hard to draw conclusions week to week. So, I told you the things I was doing. I'm doing the off-base medications, off-purpose medications, and there are 4 of those. And if I'm not sure, I think I got those on my website on drvitkohealth.com. If you get a chance to go on there and look. If it's not on there, I promise I'll have it on this week. I've had a hard time getting myself motivated, honestly, to do things. I want to write a book about this whole cancer treatment thing that I'm doing and all, and kind of ridiculous, really, because I have no idea which way it's going to turn out. The prognosis for esophageal cancer is not good, but in many ways, I feel like I'm getting on top of the thing. And then I'll get a day where it's almost like I get kind of smacked upside the head, and all of a sudden I don't feel so good for a day or so. And it's really hard to stay positive. I know any of you out there who have had cancer know what I'm talking about. Seems like, one step forward, 2 steps backward sometimes. But other times, I'll get a whole week. My biggest issue is regurgitation of food. Like I can't, sometimes it's hard to get things down. Well, I've been really the last couple of weeks, that's been improving, and I'm able to swallow foods without really any distress at this point, or very little. I just have to be kind of cautious, not to get crazy, not to eat fast, things like that. I can get into trouble with that. But symptomatically, the biggest problem I have is chest pain, and I found that Advil actually helps control that very well. So I'm taking these 4 medications, and I was drinking apple cider vinegar every day, and I was doing it up to 3 and 4 times a day. Now, mind you, I know that apple cider vinegar is acetic acid, and I would cut it to basically 0.5% dilution. So there was 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and 10 tablespoons of water, and I don't really recommend you drink it any stronger than that if you decide to do that for whatever reason. In fact, throat infections, or, you want to just clean your palate. It seems to do that very well. Or like me, I'm treating my esophageal cancer because there is at least 1 study that demonstrated that apple cider vinegar applied to cancer cells kills all the cancer cells really within about 120 hours of exposure. So I thought, hey, if I dose this thing every day, especially multiple times a day, and don't drink or eat anything for an hour afterwards each time, that's given it a pretty good exposure. And so I should be able to chip away at some of the cancer because it is directly inside my esophagus. So they are exposed, and at least the ones on the surface, and I can affect those. And honestly, and I know this is totally subjective, I can't give you objective evidence because I haven't been scoped or scanned. But in some ways, I really think that I've improved quite a bit. Maybe I have etched away some of that tumor mass. And why is that any different than any chemotherapy that goes through your blood and affects the cells? I'm applying it directly to the cells themselves. But it's also being applied to healthy cells. And so, I noticed that when I would do this every day, and especially a couple of times I did it right before I went to bed, and I thought that would be a good all-night treatment. Well, I did that for a couple of nights, and those were a couple of the most restless nights that I've had. And then for the next day or so after that, I had a lot of burning and chest pain. So I decided to take a few days off of the apple cider vinegar and maybe spell it a little bit, and then I'll dose it again somewhere down the road. Hey, this is an uncharted path that I'm following, and if there's any doctors listening, they're going, this guy's an idiot, but I can't help it. Medicine gave me no great outcomes in their treatment scheme. And so I've decided to go this route. And so I'm forging my own path on it, and I want to see what happens. So the medications, the apple cider vinegar, and the third major leg of this whole treatment scheme for me is getting my diet right. And I need to get into a regimented diet. And I told you I tried the keto diet for 5 weeks, and I got really sick in many ways to the fact that I could not even stand the thought of food, that it just repulsed me because I was eating 90% fat, and I was trying to eat some healthy fats, but there were some animal fats in there too. And I'll tell you, that was one of the most difficult things I ever did. And talk about slowing bowel function and decreasing bowel function. That diet will absolutely do it, and it takes an effort to get through that. I'm not going that route again, I can tell you that. But what I have decided to do is, through my research, I found that you can simulate a keto diet in a couple of different ways. One is with intermittent fasting. So what I've adapted to now is I wait until noon or 1 every day to eat my first food. And I try to finish up by 7 o'clock at night. And I try not to eat anything after that. And so then I wait until noon again the next day. Now, I do have a cup of coffee in the morning with heavy cream and medium chain triglycerides in it, which is basically coconut oil. And so that actually kind of starts the process of your liver building ketones from what you take in. And those ketones are important in fighting cancer because cancer cells can't thrive on ketones. They need glucose. They need sugar. And so the whole idea of this diet is to restrict the hours that I eat to tightly control my insulin and also tightly control the blood sugar that my body produces to keep that blood sugar to the lowest possible number. And I think that by doing this day in and day out, I can make that happen. And without going strict keto, because I have to have salads. I have to have some steamed vegetables. And I have to have an occasional piece of fruit, and so I'm trying to find a way to make this work. I'm charting my blood sugar and my ketone levels in my blood, and I'll have the numbers on all that stuff to share with you and let you know if this works. Seems like a much easier way to make this all work than to do a straight keto diet. My hat's off to people that can do a 90% fat diet and stay with it. To me, it's very difficult, and and I'm somebody that can apply diet very strictly. I've done it many times. For a guy that could fast for 3 weeks. I heard one of these researchers that is into the keto diet. Yeah, I fasted for 7 days. 7 days, that's nothing. I've done 3 weeks, 21 days, just water. And so I can control my diet very well, but that strict keto thing is tough, let me tell you. Let me take a couple of phone calls. My old friend Denny's on the line. Hi, Denny. What's up?
Hi, yeah, apple cider vinegar for sore throats. I tried gargling with vinegar, cutting it with water, and I tell you, that'll almost make you vomit if it's too strong. But what I found, if I have a sore throat, I'll make a vinaigrette, like slice up some tomatoes or onions or cucumbers and that, and make a vinaigrette and with the apple cider vinegar and eat the vegetable, and it'll soothe the throat.
Sure.
I believe in that for sore throats.
And Denny, that's a great preventative measure. That's there are studies that show that simply by taking a pill that has a maceration of garlic and onions and olive oil in it actually helps to decrease cholesterol and actually improves your overall health, your immune system.
Right.
And so,
and I chop up fresh garlic cloves and put in the salad. I don't do the leafy stuff too much. That takes more work, but I tell you, that'll work on the throat for a sore throat. But to gargle with vinegar, I tell you, that didn't work for me.
Yeah. Well, first of all,
and then avocados too. Avocados, that's a superfood.
Avocados are great. Don't use superfood on my show. I despise that word because every fruit and vegetable is a superfood. Every nut, every seed, they're all superfoods. But none by itself is a superfood. It's only when you combine it in a good diet.
That's where the contradictory of health care and diet comes into play. Go to the bookstore and look all the advice of all the doctors that wrote books. And I'm not criticizing you, but there's a contradictory of what to do and what not to do. And I'm really getting confused as I get older in age.
Now, how's your kid? Didn't you have a kidney stone?
No, not yet.
Oh, what did you have?
As far as I know.
You called in with something here a week or two ago.
Cholesterol. I got high cholesterol.
Oh, yeah.
And
how's that going? Are you
Tuesday, I find out the blood work.
Oh, good.
deposited my blood last week, and it takes a week. So Tuesday I find out my total cholesterol, which is, I think, a skewed number.
Yeah.
Total cholesterol is skewed because you got good cholesterol, you got bad cholesterol.
Yeah,
so
but total cholesterol is very important, so always keep that in mind.
It's a skewed number. It's a skewed number. If you got good cholesterol, that battles the bad cholesterol.
Well, that's where you want a doctor that understands that. Like my wife has high good cholesterol, very high, and her total cholesterol is a little bit high, but that's okay. We're not worried about it because her good cholesterol is so high. So,
but this is the problem with today's age. We have so much information available to us that the doctors are, you're right, the doctors are in a tough business today because us patients are getting very educated and very confused.
A lot of patients think they're getting educated, but I'll tell you, the sad thing is there's so much misinformation. Denny, I got to run. Thanks for calling, buddy. Okay, I got another call. Craig. Hey, Craig, Dr. Vitko here. What's up?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thanks for being there.
Thank you.
I was wondering, do you have an open mind?
Well, it depends on what you have to say, because certain parts of my mind have been closed for a long time, but I'm no different than everybody else in that regard. Go ahead.
Okay, very good.
If you say anything too crazy...
His name is Dr. Gil Lederman.
Okay.
And he does radiotherapy, okay?
Uh-huh.
He has been able to help hundreds, if not thousands, of many, many different people, men and women, all different types of cancer.
Mm-hmm. Okay? Where were you exposed to him? Did you use him?
I've listened to a number of the different programs from New York. He's from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
He's in downtown New York City. Okay?
Which means I can't afford him.
And he deals with all kinds of different coverages, whatever you have. Okay.
Mm-hmm. What's the name again, Craig? What's his name again?
It's Dr. Gil Lederman. I think it's Lederman.
Okay. I'm going to look him up, and I'll talk about him next time on the show.
Well, I have the phone number for you.
That's okay. I'll look him up for sure. I'll get on the internet. I thank you so much for your call.
Because he can help you.
Okay, Craig. Thanks, buddy. Have a good day. Okay, so let's go back to what Denny was saying for a minute. This whole thing, folks, about patients becoming educated, I love that. I love that people are studying, but I'm looking at what I'm going through and how challenging it is to find valid information and then try to distill it down to something useful is tremendously difficult, even with somebody with the kind of science background that I have. You know, I was pretty well trained in science. I had, a lot of chemistry, a lot of biology, a lot of physiology, microbiology, biochemistry. I understand a lot of things that a lot of people don't. Now, am I a scientist? No, thank God, because sometimes they've got the blinders on and they have a very narrow view of things when they're supposed to be the most objective people there are. But for the average person, I'm not telling you not to look, but holy crap, there is so much garbage out there on the internet. Just like this, and I'm not saying, and maybe, Craig, maybe this is a good doctor. I'm going to look him up, Gil Lederman or whatever. I'll look it up and I'll see and I'll know, because there are and especially when it comes to cancer treatment, everybody's got the answer, and when you really look at it, there's a few people that have given testimonials that they are cured, but there's 100 that died under the treatment. And so it's no better than modern medicine in their treatment. Now, let me tell you something. I lost a friend this week to cancer, and he wasn't like a friend that I would sit down with and have a beer with, maybe, because I never did. But he was a patient of mine for, a couple of years at least. I've known him and his family for a long time, and it disturbs me because he had the best medical care there was, and he was a healthy guy overall. And, even with the best medical care there was, he died. And that hits me in a way because I hear people say all the time, I had somebody come into my office the other day, well, you need to go get that treatment that they want to do, cut the esophagus out and stuff, because they'll save you. Well, there's no guarantees of that. And I listened to the whole gamut of possibilities out of it, and I wasn't impressed. Now, maybe I know there's a person here and there who's done well with it, but there's also a dozen people for every one that did well that died during the treatment or from the treatment or whatever. And it kills me sometimes when I hear people say, oh, my brother-in-law had this done and he got through it fine, but then he got an infection and died. So the treatment was good. It fixed him, but then he got an infection. Well, he got an infection because his immune system was beaten to a pulp and his body couldn't respond. And so that's part of the treatment. So if I'm going to die, I'm going to die on my own terms is what it comes down to. So look, folks, Dr. David Vitko, enjoy incredible health. I'll be back in just a minute, and we'll finish up here today. Thanks so much for listening.
Welcome back to Incredible Health with Dr. David Vitko.
Alrighty, I'm back, and I've got about 3 minutes, and where does an hour go? It just amazes me. Talking for an hour goes fast, but look, I want to leave you folks with one thing. If I die tomorrow, which used to be just a saying, and now it's in the back of my mind, but if I were to die tomorrow, I want you to hang on to one thought, because you won't hear it anywhere else unless you really search like I have. So this one thought is the most important factor for our health overall is energy efficiency. It's how your body handles the foods that you put into it, the energy it gets out of it, and the nutrition it gets out of it. If you don't combine good nutrition with ample energy, your body can't function normally. A good example of that is, I've had a little bit of internal bleeding, so I've lost some iron. My iron level got low. A simple thing like iron being low put me basically to the point where I'd treat a couple of patients, I'd have to go lay down for a half hour. That's how powerful one component of your diet can be. So I added iron back in, and a week later, I've got energy back. And so, all things need to come together. Now, that's an odd situation because I'm losing blood. But for the average person, it still rings true, and especially for women who lose blood monthly, basically, menstruating women, who need to replace that iron very often. Some of them are going through life, feeling really tired and wrung out and fatigued, and they have kids to look after and things like that, and they don't know why, and it could very well be an iron deficiency. So that's a simple thing, but B12 deficiency is another thing that is very simple. And if you're a vegetarian or you're a vegan or, even somebody who severely limits, any kind of animal products, you need a B12 supplement, or you need to at least occasionally eat a piece of meat or even fish, or chicken, occasionally. Probably once a month would suffice to keep your B12 levels up. But, there's a lot of components that come into it. But the most important thing with diet is to create a highly energy efficient body. No matter what anybody says, no matter what cures anybody offers you, you need that as the basis for your overall health. And I'll kind of extrapolate on that. I'll go into that a little more next time we meet, which will be next week. And I can't wait to talk to you folks. Dr. David Vitko, this is Enjoy Incredible Health. Make sure you check out the podcasts on iHeartRadio or at drvitkohealth.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day.